Good morning and welcome to our new video this week. My name's Jane and my colleague Finn. Hi Finn.
Hello, morning, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm suffering a little bit from the pollen today, I must admit though. It's a little bit eye-watering, should I say.
And I know that we were talking about this earlier, but a lot of people are beginning to struggle a bit with the lockdown. It's kind of getting everyone a bit down at the moment, isn't it?
Well, I think as well, because our colleagues over in England, I know lots of schools today are beginning to open their doors to more schools, and I think, well, you know, it's beginning to make people think a little bit more about the situation we're in. So
it is. So very difficult times, but we have to keep on moving forward, and that's what we're talking about today, isn't it? It's keeping on moving forward with professional learning.
So it's going to be still.
No standing. Well, we can't stand still with anything ever. But I think professional learning is quite a different beast right now, isn't it?
Well, it's completely different. And I know in some teachers we've spoken to, professional learning is not really on the agenda at all. But I know lots of schools and teachers who we've spoken to, professional learning is, but it's very much individual, and it's not very much of a strategic overview, which I know we've talked about in previous videos.
Yeah, and it's something that you brought up earlier that I thought was really interesting when we were just having a chat before this video. We were talking about professional learning being, or work in schools being linear. So it's like this sort of hierarchy of, well, we need to think about how we're going to open the school. We need to think about how, or maybe at the top it's the hubs, and then home learning. And so it's a very sort of linear,
isn't it?
Yeah, and professional learning often seems to be right down there at the bottom, doesn't it?
It's how we can then make sure that as we're moving forward, we can start to shift that position that professional learning is in, to make sure that it's accessible to everybody and it's having the right impact that we want it to have.
Yeah, because of course equity is really important, isn't it?
Because, word at the moment.
Yeah, well, you know, let's not forget that you know, everybody's in a very different situation. Everyone has different demands on their times at home, or whether they're working in a hub, whether they're doing home learning, whether they've got young children at home, whether they've got illness in the family.
Whether they're shielding themselves.
Exactly. So there's people are dealing with an awful lot. So it's thinking about whatever professional learning you provide actually needs to address everybody's situation, just like you would do with home learning, isn't it? I mean, I saw yesterday on Twitter that there was some professional learning that was being provided that schools need to pay for. That was a whole day of professional learning online. And I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I could face that.
It's not practical if you're at home all day and you've got the dog and you've got the kids. Yeah. You've got other things to do that, you know, work for school.
It's potentially not practical if you're actually back in school and you've got, you know, key worker children in, or you've got, you know, you're in England and you've got reception year 1 and year 6 coming back in and you're incredibly busy. And I think that there was a really good blog out by Professor Becky Allen not that long ago talking about parental load theory, you know, a link with cognitive load theory. But I think exactly the same is relevant for teachers, isn't it?
Teachers load theory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're a parent and you're a teacher.
Yeah.
And a learner.
Well, even those who aren't parents, I mean, I think, you know, certainly in the first few weeks of the current restrictions, I know I was overloaded, but I'm finding more and more so now that I have to really focus and concentrate on something in order to shut everything else out. It's quite difficult, isn't it?
I think it's that everything just takes that little bit much longer.
Yes.
To set up and to do and to get to the end of. And I feel that you've got, well, me personally, I've got about 3 or 4 different things started. I never seem to quite finish any of them.
So if we were thinking about professional learning and what it's going to look like, excuse me, in the future, I think there's still an expectation, and it's a hopeful expectation. I think it's something that we would all like to think that would happen, is that at some point this will all be over and it will be this really neat finish and we'll be able to go back and everyone will be in school and it'll be face to face as it was before. But I think the reality of the situation is that may not come for a very long time, or it may not even come at all, that we may end up having to live with COVID-19 and just do things slightly differently. So in the near future, say in the next 6 months to a year, and I think it is reasonable to expect it to be 6 months to a year, We know that there's a phased return happening in England at the moment. We know we've got an announcement in Wales coming on Wednesday from the Education Minister. We don't know what that's going to include, whether it's opening or not. But I think it's clear to say that with a phased reopening and the physical space within a school, we're going to have remote learning and in-school provision coexisting for quite some time. So if that's the case, and we've got this linear, we can do this, and this, and then professional learning is at the bottom, how can we, with teachers who are doing effectively two roles, how can we support them to actually move forward with things which are not necessarily directly related to their current work? Things like Curriculum for Wales. I think that's really, really difficult, but we need to focus on what is going to help them with their current work and with the future.
And there is a place, and we've said this before in one of our previous videos, about that there is a place for that individual professional learning for things that you feel yourself you want to develop. But I think as moving forward, we need to think about the school and, here in Wales, the whole nation, about what are we going to do together to be able to support moving forward with Curriculum for Wales.
Absolutely, and we know that the only real certainty we have is the past. We don't have any certainty about the future. So anything that was identified in your school improvement plan as an issue before is probably going to be even more of an issue now. So if you knew your pupils lacked independence and resilience, and therefore standards needed to be improved, then that's still going to be an issue now. And for some pupils, that's going to be even more of an issue because they're not going to be accessing the home learning. So we think we've come up with a reasonable solution, don't we? We've come up with what we've called our Research Bites webinars.
Well, I think it also stems back to the fact how popular and how well used we know our sketch notes are, not just here in Wales, but right across the world. And I know the first webinar, we're talking about how we can take one of those sketch notes and use that for professional learning for everyone. Because
this is the thing, isn't it? It's teachers are really, really busy, and that's just got even more important. They're even busier. So bite-sized chunks of professional learning is what everybody needs to be doing. A bite-sized chunk that you return to, just like you would with learning, is you're not going to give your entire curriculum all in one go, is that taking an element of it, the most important element, letting people try it out, letting people discuss it, come back to it, and then look at what refinement you need. Because teaching is an incredibly complex task, but there are some key principles that underlie that. And the key principles about learning and how that happens and what happens in the brain and what that looks like in terms of things that you do with your learners, whether that's in home learning or in school provision, those are really important underpinning things, aren't they?
And it's exactly the same for teachers as it is for children in the classroom.
Yeah.
So those are the principles that we really want to make sure that we use within whatever we do.
Well, that's it. And the Research Bites, we have designed it to take account of cognitive load, but also to think about using activities in the session itself that encourage the professional learners who are there to think deeply about what we're doing, so that the learning happens during the session, as opposed to we broadcast, you listen, and then you go away and you process. It's actually the processing needs to happen synchronously at the same time as the presentation. So when are our webinars?
Wednesday this week, 2 weeks, but I know they're fully booked.
Yes, they are. We've got a waiting list.
Missed with those two, but we'll obviously try and put a few more out over the coming weeks.
Yeah, but it gives you an idea of how to use the sketch notes as well, doesn't it?
But I think because we're going to record them as well, so people can fit them in as and when, whatever commitments you've got at home. But I think the face-to-face webinar and having a mixture of the two is the way forward.
Absolutely. So we're looking at bite-sized chunks of professional learning. That's where we're going next. And I think it's where everybody needs to have a focus on how they can manage moving forward in these very difficult current restrictions.
And just keep an eye on Twitter, and we'll tweet when we're going to run the next few sessions later on this term.
Great. Well, pleasure to talk to you again, Jane. And hopefully at some point I'll see you face to face.
Yeah, maybe next month.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.